Yo, what up? It's your boy, Mr. E, and today we're going to be learning about equations and relationships. So, last video we learned a little bit about tables and their rules. Now we're going to learn a little bit about equations and how we can relate tables and equations together. First things first, though, is we need to get some vocabulary down. The first word we're going to talk a little bit about is additive. And what an additive relationship is when two quantities can be expressed as related to each other through addition or subtraction. So addition and subtraction, they kind of go hand in hand. So really important to remember that. It can be written as y equals x plus a, where y is related to x, through the addition of a constant a. The value may be positive or negative. Now, we're in 5th grade. We don't talk a whole lot about negative numbers, but when you add a negative number, it's like subtracting. So think addition and subtraction when we're talking about additive relationships. So a couple ways we can tell something's additive is first by an equation. So y equals x plus 2 would be an example of an additive relationship, simply because we see the addition symbol there. The next way we can tell if something has an additive relationship is through tables. And what we want to look at is what happens when x is 0. If x is any, or if y is any other number besides 0, then that means it's going to be an additive relationship, because we're going to know that that line does not go through the origin. One final way we can tell if something is additive is through graphs. And again, we'll talk a lot more about graphs later on in the week, but I just wanted to show you this really quickly. We can see right here is that this line does not intercept at the origin or cross at the origin. We can see at the bottom left, there's something called the origin, 0, 0. We'll talk a lot more about that next week. But these are a couple examples of additive relationships. And the big thing you remember is that you'll have addition or subtraction when you're using additive relationships. The next key vocabulary word is going to be multiplicative. And this is kind of a mouthful to say, so if you make a mistake on saying multiplicative, it's totally fine. Two quantities that can be expressed related to each other through multiplication or division. It can be written as y equals ax, where y is related to x through the multiplication of a constant a. The value for a may be positive or negative. Now, you might be wondering, why doesn't it say x divided by a? We could think of it, instead of multiplying by a number, we can multiply by a fraction instead, and then technically we'll be dividing. I could say 2 divided by 2 equals 1, or I could say 2 times 1/2 equals 1. So we'll see a couple examples of that later. Here's a couple of examples of multiplicative relationships. In an equation, you'll see a number right next to the variable. So when a number is right next to a variable, we know we're multiplying. You could also write this as x times 2, but this is the more familiar way that we'll write it in mathematics. Another way we can tell if something's multiplicative is if at the table it does have that 0, 0, which will be at the origin, okay? And then with a graph, if it does pass through the origin, that means we have a multiplicative relationship. So it does intercept at the origin. So multiplicative is multiplication and division. Additive is addition and subtraction. If you can remember that, it's going to be super helpful. Let's go ahead and talk about how we can find equations through tables. So we have a table over here, and we're going to try to find the equation. We're going to see that this is a lot like finding tables and rules. We're just going to write it in a fancier way. So step 1, make sure the table is labeled correctly. This is a lot like what we did last time. X coordinate, input, independent, and horizontal. Remember those words. They are very important. With the y values, we can call them y coordinates, output, dependent, or vertical. Step 2 is going to be picking a rule that works from left to right for all rows. So again, very similar to what we've been doing. Add 3, that looks about right. 0 plus 3 gives us 3, 1 plus 3 gives us 4, 2 plus 3 gives us 5, and 3 plus 3 gives us 6. Determine if it's additive or multiplicative relationship. So since we're adding as we go from left to right, you guessed it, we're going to have an additive relationship. So now that we know it's an additive relationship, we're going to write it down in y equals x plus a or y equals ax form. So since we're adding 3, the equation is going to be y equals x plus 3. One final thing we want to do, because we always want to check to make sure we have a good answer, we're going to check with substitution. So I can take any two of the values from the x and y table, as long as they relate to each other, and substitute them. So replace the x with 0 and the y with 3. When we get that together, 3 equals 3, and we got a good answer. So we checked it and we did it right. Now, a super high quality student would make sure it works for every single row. That's going to take a little extra time, but I would recommend when you're taking a test or doing something that maybe is a little trickier, you definitely do that. So that's how we can find an equation based off of a table. It's a lot like what we did the other day with rules. But just remember, we're going to be using that y equals x plus a form or y equals ax. Let's go ahead and practice a couple problems together. All right, we've got a couple tables again, and this time instead of finding a rule, we're going to find an equation that matches with these tables. So first step is to make sure they're labeled properly. We've got them all nice and labeled. X is the input, independent, and the horizontal axis. Y is the dependent output and vertical axis. So we've got 1, then it goes to 5. 5, then it goes to 25. I'm starting to notice that it grows immensely. So it looks like we're going to be multiplying something, okay? So I'm going to put a multiply 5 here. Let's see if that works. 1 times 5 gives us 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 10 times 5 would be 50. 15 times 5 would give us 75. And 20 times 5 would get us 100. So we know that this is going to be a multiplicative relationship. I'm just going to abbreviate because I'm a mathematician and mathematicians are lazy. So multiplicative relationship. So we're going to need to write it in y equals ax form. So I'm going to write y equals 5x. Now, if you wanted to write y equals x times 5, that's totally fine too. This is just the more common way we write things in mathematics. So we have our rule. Now we want to just double check that we've got a good answer by replacing with one of the matches we have. So I could replace y with 5 and x with 1. 5 times 1 would give us 5. So it looks like we've got a good answer. So our equation for this table is going to be y equals 5x. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So we've got everything labeled, everything looks nice. Looks like as we go from left to right, we are decreasing. It could be subtract 5, maybe divide by 2. As I'm looking at it more, it looks like divide by 2 is probably going to be our answer, okay? But we want to double check. 10 divided by 2 gives us 5, 12 divided by 2 gives us 6, 14 divided by 2 gives us 7, 16 divided by 2 gives us 8, and 18 divided by 2 gives us 9. So divided by 2 is going to work. So since it is divided by 2, it is a multiplicative relationship, okay? So I know that can be a little confusing, like, wait, we're using division, so wouldn't it be a division? I don't even know how to say that. No, it's going to be multiplicative. Remember, multiplicative is both multiplication and division, okay? So we're going to be dividing. So there's a couple of different ways we could write this one. We could say y equals x divided by 2, and that would totally work. Or we could also call it y equals 1/2 x, okay? Let me show you with this equation why that works. I'm just going to pick two random things here. 16 and 8. So I'm going to replace y with 8 and 1/2 times 16. So when I do that, that's going to give me 16 over 2. Okay, and 16 divided by 2 would give us 8. 8 equals 8, so we've got a good answer. So again, either way is fine. This is probably the more common way you'll see it, but if you write it like this too, that's totally fine. So I'm going to choose y equals 1/2 x. And one thing that's cool is as you do this more, you'll be able to find way more different opportunities to change it up, switch it around, and numbers can be a lot of fun when it comes to that, okay? Final one, we have the rule, but now we want to figure out what we're going to be doing to get these blank spaces filled. So it looks like we're adding 4 as we go from left to right. So 1 plus 4 would give us 5. 0 plus 4 would give us 4. 5 plus 4 would give us 9. Now we have the y values, but we don't have the x values. So what do you think we should do? That's right, we're going to be subtracting here. So 14 minus 4 would give us 10. And 21 minus 4 would give us 17. So it looks like this is what we're going to be doing to fill out our table. And we should feel very comfortable whether we're given the table first or the equation first. We should be able to kind of go vice versa between those and feel super duper comfortable. So pretty easy. Just remember the words additive and multiplicative. Remember, additive is addition and subtraction. Use y equals a plus x, or x plus a. And multiplicative is multiplication and division, y equals ax. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you get some more practice with tables and rules so you can get a hundo on your next test. Keep learning, Elsbros.